So let's have a look at what we've got. So highlights, we've got sheet metal, multi-edge flange, assembly, large assembly performance, an extra enhancement on there, and assembly placement enhancements, so how we can do some different things with part copies, some translator performance options, so we've got a new way when we bring a assembly in from another system. We've got a CADENAS integration, and then other things, we've got adaptive UI, we've got decals for parts, we've got some frame design enhancements, and then big one for me, part modeling using subdivision modeling. We've got some reverse engineering options, both performance, new tool for deviation analysis, brush and box selection on several of the tools. Within sheet metal, we've got some options. We've got nested profiles for sheet metal tab, flat pattern relief patch, so you can remove little cutouts, multi-profile sweep. There's a new clamp option. That's within the part modeling and the sweep command. And in drafting, we've got large drawing performance, frame end angle calculations. I haven't got a slide on that, but I've got the information if you want it. Bead length display for weld, same on that one. We've got an option so we can do a call out, click on a weld, and it will tell you how long that weld is. Sketch and part modeling, we've got 3D sketch, so we've got some options on there, some text curve profiles, and then we've actually eventually got conic curves, so we can create a parabola. Model-based definition, there are some options on there, but I haven't covered it in this one as well. Section view, we've got that now with an associative plane, so we can create a plane and do a section view rather than just sticking to the X, Y, and Z. And then on the others, we've got some standard parts enhancements when we're translating from one type to another, and then we've also got the latest version of KeyShot. So let's get straight into that with some of the highlights on here. So sheet metal multi-edge flange. So in ordered modeling, previously we've had to select an edge, create a flange, and do that each time. So we ended up with a horrible little edges that haven't folded. We've got to go and do another feature in there to go and correct all that. So now we've got an option where we can select multiple edges and treat those out, so we can see clearly on there how we've got a multi-edge flange, how we previously had those options. The old flange option is still in there, so we can still edit the old versions if we need to, so we haven't got to worry about that. When we're doing this, there's a trim option. So you can see as we're bringing a flange in, it's automatically going to trim the other flanges that may intersect with those existing flanges, either during the creation of the new flanges or with the flanges that are already there. So we've got some nice little examples of how those are going to go. So next we're going to look at assembly, locate on inactive parts. So it's been a long-standing issue where people have had to right-click on a part, activate, or click multiple other ways of activating, where other systems, such as SolidWorks, as soon as you click on a part, it activates it. So now we've got an option where we can locate inactive parts and do certain commands with them. We can't do everything with them, but we can do standard assembly relationships on there. So with that option on there, even though it's inactive, so we haven't got the sketch that's built it up, we haven't got all the history, we have just got a part, but we can still select the faces then to then work with on there. Next one, assembly copy and paste. So now we can copy and paste multiple parts from one assembly to another, and then it's similar to when we copy and paste a feature. It then corrects the relationships and will prompt us to ask for the appropriate relationships that we need. So we can see we've got a nice little command bar, and we run through, and it will tell us which relationships are unresolved, and we can click on those, click on the faces we want those to go, or we can skip the relationship, or we can go and use at the bottom of there. We've also got the manual assembly option on there as well. So the new really big one is create internal components. So if we look on the right first, if we bring a imported part, so a step file that's come from assembly from another CAD system, it's going to create all those parts and save all those files onto the disk. But then the new in 2021, what it's going to do, it's going to create all those parts, but it's going to save them all within the same assembly folder. So imagine you're working on Teamcenter, you've now just got one assembly file that you upload into Teamcenter, you haven't got to worry about all those other parts. It's all just within that one folder. So speeds up imports exponentially. So when we do import that import parasolid step file, we've got the option there. We can see at the top, create internal components, and that's gonna say we want to do it the way that we want that to do that with that. So and then we've got the publish option. So So there is more information on the left, but I'm just going to run through quickly. So this allows us to physically create those. So once we're happy with those parts, we want to work with those parts, we can then go and publish those parts. Then that's going to save all those into the disks or into Team Center separately on there. When we have got these parts as well, we can do drag components on this as well. So we can find out the motion on that part. So even though we brought that part in, it's going to treat it and it's going to move as though that is a normal, fully constrained part. These components, when we go into a draft, even if we don't save them to disk, even if they're just in that assembly, we're still going to get those items listed in a parts list. So even though that's an imported geometry from somewhere else, we're still going to get a useful parts list on there. Next, we've got a 3D Find It by CADENAS. So this is a little tool that we've got under the Insert Components dialog box. This then allows us access to millions of parts available on the website, and this is going to be added to during while Solid is out. It's not going to be changed every release. It's there, and obviously the website is going to update, included for classic and premium users only on that one. So we can go to the 3D Find It, locate the components, and then export them to Solid Edge. Once we export them, they go straight into the assembly that we've currently got open. That's probably the big advantage. It will bring them in the correct format that we can go and assemble them straight away. So one of the big things, adaptive UI. So now we've got a box that appears above the tabs or below the ribbon, and this will have 10 command choices that we can go on to. If we right click on there, it'll give us a choice to decide to show the text, as we can see in the highlighted box, or we can show just the icons, as we can see in the other option. From my point of view, there's no point not to have the text, because otherwise you just got a load of white space either side. Really useful. So the idea of this is that it learns what you do. So if you do a align command, it will then recognise that previously you've always used a trim, you've always used some other command. So it will put those commands for you, the previous one. It will also show the previous command that you've just used. So if you do want to go and use that command again, that one's always going to be in there as well. The information that it saves does get saved into our preferences folder. So if this one then wants to be given to a new user, we can copy that over to that user's machine, so they can then have the same workflow as the more experienced users. Another command that's taken its time to come. It's still only really in beta at the moment. So this is a decal command. So it's as though we're putting an image onto a face, but the big difference is that it will wrap around multiple faces. So we can see to the left of the cancel on this option. We can go put the image in, we can rotate it, size it, add constraints exactly as we can if we go and do an ordered sketch onto any part. But what it will do, we can select the multiple faces, and it's then going to wrap that onto multiple faces at the same time, where it would just be a flat image on a flat face normally. So it's what we can do to apply to there. At the moment, when you do put it onto a face, it does kind of stretch it around the face a little bit. So there is or it projects it onto the face rather than wrap it onto the face. So there is a enhancement that they mentioned that they want to make sure there's that option, same as in the surfacing, that we can wrap it onto the face rather than project it onto the face. So just be careful if you do get a perpendicular edge, it's just going to go. So on that one, it would just go black all the way down the face. So you have to be very careful with that option on there. This puts them in their own collector at the very top, so it doesn't put them in the list on the design in the ordered modeling. It only appears in the ordered option as well. So you can't do that in synchronous. Even if you've got a fully synchronous model, you just have to go into order just to put your decal on. The decals don't currently transfer to KeyShot. That's going to be addressed in the near future, hopefully in a maintenance pack. So improvements on the frames. So we've got lots of improvements on the frames. So implementing round tubing. So the button for round tubing will create planar ends without coping. But when we apply the coping to the round tubes, it can be applied globally to all of the buttons on that part. So you can see how we go on there, and that's going to cope really nicely into those parts. So other things that we're waiting for, frame weld gaps. So this is within the options, so we can add this either globally, or we can do this to each separate end condition. We can override these, so if we want to go, actually there's some 3s and 2s, we want to do everything 4 or a different value, we can go in and change those. These work with different options, mitre, butt, and with round tubing as well. These will affect the cut length in the parts list and your BOM reports as well. There have been quite a few enhancements on there as well. We've only got miters as well, which I haven't left in, but allows us to show whether it's a positive or negative miter. So some quite nice enhancements in there as well. So we've got for coped frame ends, we can apply frame weld gaps for the coped ends. Globally, weld gap values can be edited through the quick bar. So this will pop up, or we can do this from the options. So another option is frame end caps. So this is automated end caps. So we've got a brand new dialog box on here. Save settings, very important. So we can do this quick on there. And then we go and decide the material, the thickness, the inset values, whether we want to go inside or outside. If we want to add any chamfers or any other corner treatment on those. So it's quite a useful command. It is still a little bit in beta, so offset doesn't really decide which way that's going. Is it going inside or outside? So if it's outward, an offset, is that saying plus or minus? So there's a bit of an issue which I've raised on that. So hopefully that'll be corrected by the original by the time it's released. So some nice examples of the end caps. So inward end caps, outward end caps, chamfers, fillets, and then end caps that suit the actual cross section of the frame. So just going back to there, we've got this option on here, create end caps based on that frame cross section. So even if we've got a strange frame section, we're going to have it based on that cross section itself. End cap reporting. So once we go into a draft or a BOM report, these will be listed on there as well. So we can go into the end cap, and that's going to give us the information and the size of the end cap on those as well. So part modelling, we all probably know the different subdivision modelling available in other systems. Obviously, Realise Shape in NX, Shape in Solid Edge, but we've now got subdivision modelling available in Solid Edge. So this generates a stylized body using a polygon cage to control its shape. So the body is generated through a set of rules that is repeatedly applied to each polygon, face, edge, or vertex to generate the next level polygons, vertices, and their connectivity. So when we're working with this, we're not actually working on the faces themselves. We're working on the red dots and the blue edges on these, and these drag the geometry inside. We can also select the faces that are created by any of those. So we can select, drag those, rotate those, extrude them out, lift them, pull them, twist them, whichever kind of way we want to go. So this technique is used as cage modelling. So we can see we've got the control cage, we've got the face, edge, vertex. We've got standard kind of shortcuts people are used to. So control and spacebar will change our mouse between selecting the face, the edge, and the vertex options on those. So we can do edits on those, and it's done using the steering wheel. So users of the steering wheel will find this much more comfortable. User has control of the body by adding topology to the cage or changing blend values and adding to the elements of the cage. So we can go and split the cage into additional elements, so we can just pull a certain component on there. So we can see what we can do on there. It has its own environment. So within the surfacing tab on the left hand side, we've got subdivision modelling, which will then take us into that component. It's available in both synchronous and ordered modelling, but we can only then edit using ordered features. So if we've started in synchronous, created our subdivision, if we try and do a round, it won't let us use a synchronous round. We have to go into ordered and do a blend, split, thin wall, all the different options in the ordered modelling afterwards. So what we're going to look at is the different kind of cages. There's lots of training on this. So from the update, there's about 20 pages on here. I've just split this down just so you get a rough idea. So if you do need to talk to a prospect, you can say, oh yeah, we start with these 4 different shapes: box, cylinder, sphere, and torus. We don't have to just start with one of those. We can put multiple ones in. So we can start with a cylinder, drag that up to the shape you want, put a couple of spheres in, and then do those, and it kind of all those shapes are then editable, and you can blend those together in the normal ordered environment later on. So best of the rest. So we've got deviation analysis. So when we do in reverse engineering, we want to see how different our reverse engineering item is in relation to to the original item. So I want to see, has that moved 2 mil? Has it moved less than 2 mil? And we've got the different values on there, so we can see the difference between those. So we know actually I've oversimplified that, and I want to go and redo that component. So deviation analysis. We've got the command bar at the bottom, how we run through. We've got the settings, reference objects, test objects, the results once we finish those, and then we can turn on a graph showing that deviation analysis on there. And we can go in the settings to decide exactly how everything looks on there. So reverse enhancements, the big enhancement on here is selection. So for the smooth mesh, we've now got a brush and a box selection on there. For the remesh command, we've also got that brush and box selection, so it allows us to select these easier. And then we've got a slight user interface change in the delete mesh command as well, so that's been simplified a little bit on there as well. It means time saving during the reverse engineering process. So let's go to some of the other options. So multiple profiles for a sheet metal tab. Previously we'd have had to create a tab and then do a cut separately. So now, as long as we've got the nested tabs, we can easily use those to create a nested profile feature really quickly. So next we'll look at flat pattern relief patch. So a number of reliefs are created in the sheet metal because of the software design limitations, and they aren't really needed in manufacturing. So this allows the users to go and remove the undesired reliefs from the flat pattern. So we can see with the zoomed image on there, bottom left, we can see we've got a couple of areas that we don't really need. It's just going to deform naturally. It's just going to deform as it is. So what we're going to do in the flat pattern, we're going to go and fill those items in. Some other nice little enhancements. There's a lot more just small enhancements within SolidEdge 2021. So switching part environments, depending on where we are, we just click on the grey bar. So to take us into synchronous, we just click on that. To go into ordered, we click on there, flat pattern and simplify, etc. We don't need to do anything else, just a simple single click to get into the appropriate environment that we want to go into. So we've got a multi-profile sweep enhancement. So we've got now, when we're creating a sweep, we've got a clamp option. So this is to avoid bulge or sag between two equal cross sections. In the more advanced one, I'll do a little video showing what the difference is in here, and show what the new clamp icon looks like on that. So performance improvements. So in 2020 we had the large performance mode. So now we've got a 2D drafting display option. So we've got an option for large DXF import. Eliminated some multi-repaint issues during initial open. Improved geometry display management. Improves the display of large datasets, 2D datasets we're talking about. So we've got time to open a draft file after save will also be much quicker, and time to repaint fit. So we can see we've got those time savings on there. So 2019 to 2020, small saving, but some massive savings to that underlying software. 3D curves in 3D Sketch. So we've got a couple of enhancements in 3D Sketch. So we've now got a 3D curve, so we can then create a 3D curve, snapping between those key points. So we can use these for lots of other commands, such as sweep, blue surf, path relationship, tube frame. We've got a lock constraint in 3D Sketch now as well. So if we've got a 3D Sketch element, rather than having to spend a lot of time figuring out how we fully relate this, we can use a lock command. That comes onto the next one really nicely. Relationship colors eventually in 3D Sketch. We're waiting for this for ages. So now we've got that. If the 3D Sketch is fully defined, we get that standard black relationship colors, same as we used to within our normal 2D sketches. So we've got our conic curves, hyperbola, parabola, and ellipse options. So we can go into these. So we've got our focal point, vertex, and our control points, and we can dimension these to get the shapes of the parabolas. So we know that this has been available in other systems before, for quite a few years. We've got away using the curve command, but now we can go in here and we can use the row value on here to make sure that we've got that exactly how we need it. So obviously, if you've got something where you need to have a specific focal point, we know that it's going to be correct because we know exactly where the focal point is, and the curve is going to be how we want it to be. Section by planes. Section by planes came in 2020. Now we've got an associative plane. This is probably one of the biggest things biggest feedback I've had customers on this. There's also been some performance enhancements as well. so it's quite useful. So we've still got our normal dynamic option. So we select the plane, we select X, Y, Z on the keyboard, and we can do any of these. But if we want to create a plane, offset angle plane, we can then click the icon that we've got, the associative plane icon on there. We can also click A on the keyboard then to allow us to click on that plane. That's then going to be one of the planes that we cut from. We can use that along with the standard X, Y, and Z planes as well. So next 3 slides, we're looking at annotations directly on models. So previously, for a long time in the PMI tab, we've been able to create model views. So a model view that will have dimensions on it. Also allow us to have sections within that model view, and we can go through and create multiple model views. Really useful for design checks, team meetings, looking at designs. But now we can actually add annotations on there. So if you want it to be an annotation, that model view will also go into the draft environment as well. So we've got a center mark, the bolt hole circle, and the center line on there as well. So last little section, there was standard parts. So there were some things on standard parts to do with translating from categories and characteristics from an older to a newer version. So there were some little issues on there which have now been solved for people who are coming from an older standard part system to make sure that everything stays in the same groups. But the last thing I'll look at is KeyShot. So KeyShot installs with 9.2, but as soon as you start it will prompt you to install to the latest version, which as of the start of June is 9.3, so that will then run and install. So you'll have the very latest version of KeyShot with Multiedge 2021. So the first thing I'll look at is a denoise option. So just along from the performance mode, allows us to denoise it. So rather than it kind of going really noisy every time we move it, it's gonna denoise it. So this, along with the performance mode, will allow us to kind of have a much clearer view of a part as we're looking at it. So we've got some new materials. So we've got cloth and fuzz materials. These have now been added. So we've got a new section, real cloth, and we've got the different options on those that we can have a look to. The advanced options on those can only be changed with a KeyShot Pro license. We've got some additional generic materials. So we've got a huge amount of flexibility with several parameters that can be adjusted, such as sheen, clear coat. We can use material importer to import desired material types. And we can edit properties from the material tab in the product section if we need to for those materials. Other KeyShot features, GPU mode. This was on the previous one for people that did upgrade. So this allows us to harness the full GPU ray tracing power of the new RTX and OptiX. So this enables that option to go. So if you've got the very latest GPU, so RTX 3000, 4000, if you're really lucky, 5 or even 8000, which is a crazy price, you can go and use those. So that will allow it to render faster and with better quality, because we can't use ray tracing on standard graphics cards, only the RTX and OptiX ones. And then we've also got a 3D model library, so we can add our own models to the 3D model library. Really useful. I found in the previous version we had the new way we could bring a model in and section it, so we could create a model that we want to use for section it. We can create specific shapes in there, which we can then use to section that part if we need to. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, just send me an email. Thank you.